Hey team, Richard Tubb here with another episode of TubbTalk, the podcast for managed service providers. Now, long-time listeners of this show will know this podcast is all about shining a light on the smartest, most successful people in the managed service provider industry so that you, our dear listener, can benefit from their experiences. Well, today I'm speaking to the founder of one of the UK's most innovative managed service provider businesses. Chris Pottrell is the managing director of Nebula IT, an MSP that's headquartered in Chipping Sodbury near Bristol in the UK. And as we'll hear, Nebula offers a comprehensive set of services with a really strong focus on cybersecurity. I just know you're going to find our conversation a valuable one. Chris, welcome to TubbTalk.
Thanks for having me, Richard. Pleasure.
My pleasure. We were just saying just before we come on air, we were actually due to do this interview. I think it was last week, wasn't we? And then, dare I say, global warming, a big storm that hit the UK, had other ideas. And up here in the studio, garage in Newcastle upon Tyne, I was without power for like 5 hours, which makes it difficult to record a conversation, doesn't it? So thank you for being patient and coming back on the show.
My pleasure, mate. I was sat here for 5 hours waiting, ready to go. I was thinking, where's Richard? No, it's pleasure, mate. Things happen. Things happen.
It's worth the wait. It'll be worth the wait. So let's dive straight in then. So tell us about your MSP Nebula. I gave a high-level overview, but any staff at Nebula IT, what type of clients do you serve, that type of thing?
So we've just this week, actually, last couple of weeks, grown to 17 strong.
Wow.
We just today, actually, funnily enough, so good timing. There's a reason why we delayed this a week. It was to celebrate our 12th birthday. So that was today. That actually came as a surprise. Someone actually had to tell me. It used to be that benchmark that you aim towards, but now it's kind of just reminding me how old I am becoming. Yeah, like you touched on, we're based down in lovely Bristol with the funny accents and all. And we started off just like every other IT company. A lot of the time it was kind of an accidental process where I worked historically for an MSP up in the Midlands, and my wife and I kind of wanted to move back to Bristol. It was never my intention to start an MSP, certainly not scale it to where we've got now. And we've been focusing a lot recently, probably the last 5 years, 6 years on, it's a buzzword of the industry, but trying to niche down into a specialist field. So for us, it's actually kind of that supply chain of the MOD, working with military companies that relate to in and around the MOD.
Yeah.
From a higher level, you could say businesses that they have to be regulated. So it's not a choice, they have to comply. So we built some packages from the IT all the way to the cyber to the consultancy levels that fit that market really well.
Well, I'm really intrigued because one of, looking into my crystal ball for 2025 and beyond for the MSP industry, I'm a firm believer actually that compliance regulation is huge opportunity. There's going to be, some MSPs are a little bit concerned about it, but I do believe huge opportunity and it's going to come to the fore. So another reason why I think this interview is perfectly timed, because obviously, working with the Ministry of Defence, it's going to place a lot of, I'm not going to say overhead, but a lot of necessary steps that you need to take in there. So perhaps we could explore that a little bit as we talk.
Yeah, it aligned with what we believe as a culture and our values. It's that businesses should be doing this. So how can we help them along the way? And is this sector which had the least pushback. So we could really refine those services. So we started looking at this process, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, moving towards when the scheme came out, moving towards that IASME assured service provider status. How can we elevate what we offer above what other MSPs are offering? The vast majority will be able to assist with cyber essentials, but being able to prove that you've been part of the process, the design of it, the question sets. So we really focus on building and investing in that side of the organization, having the skill set internally to deliver on those services. It is certainly becoming a bigger requirement where people are coming to us and saying they're not leading with the IT conversation, they're leading with that cyber and governance and compliance conversation. Now we're moving into the realms of AI and compliance and data governance. So you have to evolve as an organization or be very comfortable just doing the IT. If you're not willing to do all of it, you do need to leave it to people who are willing to do that stuff. But for us, we kind of grabbed it by the horn, so to speak. We're enjoying doing it. We're enjoying seeing where that industry is going. And some of the partnerships we're forming with the likes of Huntress, IASME, Pax8, and all those wider vendors, it's allowed us to evolve, and I keep using that word, from a product-led MSP to more of that consultative IT cyber MSP that we're striving to become.
Yeah, and you mentioned the MOD, Ministry of Defence, there here in the UK. That's not the type of client that just falls into people's hands. There's going to be a lot of MSPs, around the world listening to this and going, "Holy cow! How do you end up with a client like the MOD?" So, are you okay? Can you share with us how did that relationship
Yeah,
come about?
a lot of so it's indirect MSP, MOD. You'll be
Yeah,
amazed at how big that ecosystem is. There are so many types of businesses that work with the MOD, from payroll through to logistics, supply, recruitment, but they all have to meet the same requirements. And it was going over and above, and we kind of realized the MOD was starting to really enforce these requirements on. So it was, we did a merger and an acquisition of an MSP 7 years ago. We actually inherited that first customer, and it wasn't until we really got under the hood with them that we discovered how valuable they would actually be to us. Because on the face of it, it was, 50 user business. That's a nice size, kind of perfect for us customer. It wasn't until we really sat down with them and started doing our reviews and roadmaps that we kind of discovered they've got problems on the horizon. How can we resolve them? And it's a very close-knit industry. People move sideways within it. So when you impress one, it actually became quite easy to impress a few of them. And people
right.
see this in the charity space, I think, is they do talk. And I think if you can kind of set the standard early, then a lot of them will follow. And it's been pretty a dramatic growth in the number of clients that we've taken on in that sector from the word of mouth.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. I speak to lots of MSPs. You talked about niching, or as our North American cousins would say, niching. Uh,
Yeah.
and lots of MSPs I speak to, certainly in Europe, when they talk about niching, it's like, oh, I couldn't do that because it would cut off a whole area of business to me. But it seems to me what you've done, and I did a little bit of this with my own MSP back in the days. If you learn the lingo, if you build up, if you learn the tools, if you build up a good reputation with one or two people in that niche, as you say, word of mouth means actually you're going to become the go-to
Yeah.
person or company within that space.
We have these conversations internally, and we challenge the team with them. It's saying, how are we special? We're not. It sounds good. Every MSP is great at IT support. Every MSP has the best help desk. You do have to niche. You're not saying that you're going to neglect or reject your target client profile, which might be a little bit wider than the niche that you're really homing in on. But our marketing message, especially through 2025, will be very much in that sector. But they do relate, because there might be professional services, lawyers, that kind of industry that are looking up to the MOD sector and saying, well, hold on a minute. If they're doing it, maybe to a lower level, we need to do it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been that snowball effect for us. We are in no way saying we will not work with anyone other than, but it's definitely the top of the pile for us for sure.
Yeah. And I recall that the interesting thing happened when you start to get a niche. It makes it easier for people in that niche, obviously, to find you because you're front of mind, you're much more targeted. But interestingly, I don't know if you've had this experience, but people outside the niche would approach you and go, I know it's not what you do, Chris, but
Yeah.
because they're attracted by what you're doing to a high level within a specific niche. Has that sort of thing happened to you?
Yeah. I think especially where people around the events and stuff that we put on over the last couple of years, we will talk quite openly about the work we're doing in that sector. We'll have them in the room, but there will be other people going, I know I'm not in that sector, but I've been told I do need to kind of elevate the whole thing. Can we have an early conversation? Sometimes we do say, look, no, we're not the right fit. I'm sure you're probably speaking to a lot of MSPs, that's a scary place to be when you first start doing it.
Yeah.
You go from being yes to everything to a selective no and a selective yes. But I don't think at any point we've been worried that the niche is hampering our growth by any means. If anything, it's just making us more effective. It's allowing us to hit our goals and targets as an organization. And we know it's a little bit easier to steer the culture and guide it internally if we know the target client profile that we're going after, right? We don't want to be spread too wide and too thin.
Yeah, I want to pick up on something you said there, events. So I noticed Nebula do things which are not too common amongst other MSPs. So you've hosted your own event. So tell us more about how that came about, how that went.
Trial and error.
Mm.
How did that start? Okay, so we did some maybe 5 or 6 years ago where we dipped our toe in the water a little bit, where we maybe just did roundtable events,
Yeah.
and it was just around a conversation. Ultimately, we just wanted to learn more. But most recently, we've tried to make it as unsalesy and vendor agnostic, and it's just about delivering value to the customer, right? So we've gone from having an event called Cyber, which is Cybeer,
I like what
where
you did there. Yeah.
it was great. A fair few people signed up for that one, and we had a Ashton Gate. So I don't know if you're a football fan, Richard. We don't have many good clubs down our side of the country, but in Bristol City is one of them. So we kind of had a cyber event in a day, and at the time we were working closely with ConnectWise, so we kind of leaned into Lee and the team there. Fantastic, really fun event, and then we wrapped it up with something that would make them come back, and that was free beer. And we
You might be
them,
onto something here.
yeah,
And it's also given an insight into British culture, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. It's amazing what it sells. But we actually taught them how to make the beer as well. So we had guys from a local brewery come in and demonstrate how the beer process and all that sort of stuff was made. Then we reviewed it and we realized we are in no way geared up in our marketing processes to follow the event up, and we needed help. So the relationship, I'm sure we'll touch on this, is later on with PAX and just being able to bring in some expertise. So we've moved the event to Bristol's Concord Museum because it kind of really aligned with us. You know, it's quite a cool thing that Bristol has. And we were able to attract, Microsoft Direct without any support of PAX 8, with the PAX 8 team in there, with the Huntress team in there, the Mesh team were nice enough to come down. We did some bits, but we also brought in our kind of charity partners to try and involve the room and our wider community. And it was brilliant. We went from 20 in the first event to 40, and I think we just did 75 in the September just gone.
Very
and
cool.
It was great because some of our customers in the room actually then volunteered for our community partner. We're able to raffle off some Lego Concord to make it all relevant. And then because we don't do anything in halves, we decided to design our own hot sauce 3 days before the event. But it came out 5 times hotter than we thought it was going to.
Oh my goodness.
So we did have to put a couple of warning slides. But yeah, if it's probably, I do get asked quite a lot around the events and whether people should do them. Absolutely. Yeah. I know some of the other MSPs are very similar size to us who don't do it, have started doing it, and they're really seeing the benefit of that engagement with their customers or potentials.
And it seems to me that you've mentioned already a few names that are very familiar to listeners to this show. So you mentioned PAX 8, ConnectWise, Huntress. I want to delve into those relationships a little bit more because I think what you're doing at Nebula is a blueprint, really, a prototype for what MSPs should be looking at their vendor relationships as. But before we do, I know MSPs listening are always interested in getting a little bit nosy, getting a little bit under the hood and hearing what their peers are using. So tell us about the tools that you're using at the moment. So your professional service automation, RMM, what do you use day to day?
We've really been working hard to consolidate this. And for years, we were always, trailblazer. We want to be cutting edge. Actually, there's no issue with being one step back, but doing the tools really, really well and building your processes around them. So centrally, our PSA is Autotask. Our finance package, which I think people overlook quite a lot, is Zero. So we've got quite complex integrations between them. Data RMM, the team have been working with it for absolutely years, so they've really got some refinements in there. Most recent, well, I say more recent, PAX 8 is the CSP. We are all in with PAX 8. Having them on our doorstep has been really useful. It's quite nice to have someone in Bristol.
Yeah, they've got incredible offices down there, haven't they? And the team, we've had loads of PAX8 people on this podcast, and people have said to me, "Man, you have a lot of PAX8 people." And yeah, I do advisory work behind the scenes with them,
Oh,
but
brilliant.
they are such an incredible company. I've never met a person at PAX8 yet that I
Brilliant.
wouldn't want to hang around with and have a beer. They're just lovely people and very knowledgeable.
They come to our events. They've come to
Yeah.
our awards nights. We've had them on our tables. We're really close with I'll give him a shout out. Curtis Stanley, our account manager. He's
Yeah.
been brilliant. So I remember sitting down with Curtis and I was saying, "Promise me you won't hurt me or hurt my feelings." We've got a deal. So they've absolutely lived up to their side. They've supported us with everything, marketing, made sure we're made aware of all the events they're running. They're training our team. They're doing master classes, and again, having them on the doorstep is perfect for us. Being
Yeah.
able to just go to their offices. We're hosting client meetings in their offices as well, which is great. Huntress is a more recent one, but again, absolutely all in. We use their entire suite, really to consolidate everything we do and just make sure we're doing it right. Another fantastic tool which we are all in on, every one of our customers has, is Enforcer. So we've been working hard over the last 18 months to design what we believe is a Nebula baseline that we've designed from the ground up with the support of Enforcer and Microsoft, and just being able to govern that system from Enforcer with Autotask and the RMMs has been brilliant. It's just revolutionized the way that team have worked together as a managed services team. It's very clear as to the standard everyone should be at.
And some people may not be familiar with Enforcer with an I. I spoke to Mel and Christy, who works on the Enforcer team just today, in fact, longtime friends. But so Enforcer, what is it they do for Nebula? What does the tool look like?
On the face of it seems very simple, but it's not been mastered yet, even by Microsoft. So I always pitch it as it's what you wish Microsoft Lighthouse was. So being able to, if you are big in business premium and Intune and governing those standards and baselines, it's the tool that you need that is one step above, and it's elevated above all of your tenants. It doesn't just deploy the baselines and the standards. We're able to kind of monitor for changes. So it's great if you've got maybe someone in your first line help desk that maybe has settings and access they shouldn't, but even down to if you're doing co-managed IT and you maybe have someone that's making these changes, just being able to back up and restore them. So we can be safe in the knowledge that every single one of what we call our premium clients running that baseline, they are absolutely standardized. There is minimal difference between all of them, which for us as an MSP like 10 years ago, that was a pipe dream. Having them all on the same stack, all on the same tool. We're not perfect, but we're there. Yeah, we're very close, I would say.
Yeah. And it's a really intriguing market opportunity at the moment. So, you mentioned Enforcer. I think they're probably leading the pack, but there's others out there. There's Inside Agents. There's One Click Comply. There's loads of these Hornet Security, M365 tools and things of that nature. I find it really interesting that, they're all about, compliance. We talked about, to a degree, regulation, putting in place standardization. How important was that to you? Why did you come across Enforcer and look at it and go, well, we could do that ourselves realistically, but this is going to save us a lot of time?
It was that want to kind of push it at scale.
Yeah.
We had quite a lean help desk at the time. Quite a lot of clients at the time, probably too many. That sounds a bit counterintuitive, but I think we all agreed that we weren't servicing to the standards and levels that we would want.
Yes.
So we pumped the brakes and just said, the aggressive growth over 2-3 years has been fantastic, but the tooling and the way in which we are supporting is not standardized enough. If we're looking to, hampers things like onboarding new support team members, there's a lot of what we call shoulder tapping going on, where someone goes, why is this one uniquely different to this one?
Yeah.
We wanted the foundation of every client, from onboarding to day-to-day support to the way we communicate with them, how they perceive us, to be absolutely standardized, the same. We didn't need or want, people being kind of outliers. And it did mean that we had to kind of leave some partnerships, ones that maybe didn't want to align, couldn't see the value in it. Maybe we didn't do a good enough job of describing the value. But I think since then, having that standardized approach gives our guys more time. So we've actually encouraged the team internally from apprentice level to third line engineer to infrastructure to be involved in the development of that baseline. I'm techie by trade, and I'm jealous that I don't get to bend or break stuff anymore. I'm kept out of the room. All I need to know is what the value and how we're positioning it. But yeah, I think it's probably been the best thing we did in the last 2 years.
That's
sure.
amazing. Yeah, I look back to my time in managed, when I ran an MSP, we're going back sort of 15 years plus. I was brought from a corporate IT background, so very early I understood the benefits of standardization, of compliance, that type of thing. However, as you said, it's like painting the fourth bridge or playing whack-a-mole a lot of the time, isn't it? So if these tools existed back then, my life would have been a heck of a lot easier. Yeah, so I can see why you're so attracted to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you do have to commit with the vendor first. With Enforcer especially, we said, and Huntress, this is going across the stack, and we're going to catch up with it, rather than kind of drip feeding it into your client base. We made a decision that we'll take the financial kind of hit on this, and everyone's going to catch up.
Yeah.
And we're able to kind of, in middle of this year, I think we finally got to a point where we go, this is absolutely doing what we needed to do, and the customers see the value in the service as well.
Yeah, well, I said at the top of the call that you're one of the UK's most innovative MSPs. May make you blush, but I think any listener can hear that now. You talk about the wonderful events that you're having, that you're putting on, leading the way with that. You're using some of the cutting edge MSP tools that are out there and stack and platforms as well. So Huntress, again, probably very familiar to long-time listeners to the show. We've interviewed people from Huntress. We've interviewed MSPs like yourself that use Huntress. But for anybody who's not familiar, you said you use the entire Huntress stack. So tell us what that looks like in practice.
So for us, it started off with the EDR stack, the endpoint. What kind of attracted us to them is we were flirting with SentinelOne, and we've been using them for a fair bit of the stack, and we said we need to standardize. We're pushing the majority of our clients into business premium and delivering the value that comes with a tool within. We need the SOC side of it. We need that human SOC element associated with it. And what actually attracted us to them, like PAX, is probably the culture they've got.
Yeah.
From the leadership down, Kyle, if you ever get a chance, you've probably heard him speak. It's fantastic. It's so good. Through to their CTO, through to the team you work with, you can see that they're kind of professional mavericks is the best way. They are trying to disrupt it and really frustrate the people that are trying to do damage to your customers. The way they operate it's synergy for us. The way, how simplistic the tool is, how easy it is to deploy, how it integrates with the stack, but most importantly, how that SOC integrate with our human team.
Yeah.
They're kind of complementing the skill sets we've got internally. They're not in any way replacing them. It's to complement how good they already are.
So SOC, Security Operations Center, some people might view that, I always use the term partnership for these type of things, but some people talk about it being outsourced or things of that nature. Many MSPs listening are going to be wary of outsourcing because they say security, oh man, we've got to do that internally. We couldn't possibly partner up with somebody else to do it. So did you have any of those concerns yourself? And how do you feel about it today, that relationship?
So we went quite far down the line 3 years ago of developing our own SOC. Now I talk about it, it sounds daft. But we were using Azure Sentinel, writing our own API integration, integrating it with Autotask. And it wasn't until you see the huge overhead, not just financially, but by people, recruitment, upskilling, you need to make a dedicated decision whether or not you are doing that in-house. That is a huge, huge challenge.
Massive.
And if you are on that journey of becoming an MSSP and dedicated security and trying to move away from the technology side of things, I would still recommend Huntress to hold your hand along the way until you're ready and you understand. The recruitment challenge was the biggest one for us. We're very lucky in that we've got some grads and cyber advisors and IASME backed guys internally, but we know how hard we've worked to upskill them, train them, develop them. Huntress understands that, and they're in no way, we don't really see them as outsourcing. We just see them, it's a portal with that extra layer that we need. It's human led. It's not AI and automation led. There's very much that human human side to it. So, they're almost daily having conversations with our team as if they're in a room on the other side of the world.
Yeah, which in my experience, whether you want to call it outsourcing, partnership, whatever,
Mm.
again, back when I was an MSP, we were one of the first in the UK to actually embrace that outsourcing model, the
Yeah.
outsourced help desk, and things of that nature. And the mistake I see many MSPs making, Chris, is that they almost abdicate responsibility. They go, right, okay, we've got some. I'm not being quite crass here, but some grunts. We'll give them that work, and
Yeah.
it never works. It's got to be an extension of your team. So it sounds as though you've got that sort of great relationship where you don't see them as Huntress team, you see them as an extension of Nebula.
Yeah, we've never been shy of telling our customers who we use.
Yeah.
One of the downsides maybe of the MSP MOD world is we have to be very open. We cannot say we are doing the backups and we've wrapped it in a nice Nebula package. We can around, we can nebularize it as we call it, but we're very open that it's powered by Huntress's SOC.
Mm.
But ultimately, it's our responsibility. We are just in a partnership with Huntress to make sure we're catching everything and actioning things when we need to.
Yeah, and if any listeners have ever followed Tradecraft Tuesday or any of the Huntress sort of open shops they do where they invite you in to see what's going on, and that, as you say, Carl and the team, mind-blowingly good. These guys, I wouldn't say they're having fun disrupting well, they probably are, but
I think they are.
yeah, they're having fun doing it. However, they are just stone cold brilliant at what they do, aren't they?
Yeah, we've been blown away. I remember it wasn't just the cyber side that attracted us to us. Like I said, some of the events, he'll actually talk openly about the challenges of growing and scaling a company within that sector, which is really interesting to listen to and hear. The challenges and how he's grown as a CEO and adapted his leadership style. It's almost as important to me personally as it was learning about all the tech stack they were running. It's like, how have you gone from one to incredible rate of knots that they're recruiting and the challenges they've go through? It's not too dissimilar to what MSPs in this country are going through.
Yeah.
How do we attract the right team? He's been really forthcoming in ideas and options that we can go down.
Yeah, and they've got some incredible staff in the UK. We interviewed Dre Aga, who's one of the SOC team there, and lives in the UK. And we did that for a TubbTalk podcast last year, and it was, man, the feedback we got, it was incredible. One of the best episodes we've ever recorded, because Dre, very personable, like most of the Huntress team, and also, but you could just see the quality coming through, how much effort they put into staying on top of their trade.
We had Phil, one of the technical consultants, come in at the event, and we said, look, you got 30 minutes. Absolutely, do whatever you need to do. Just don't terrify people too much. So he showed everyone how MFA tokens can be stolen, and the room just kind of went, oh, okay. But the way he presented it was like, look, this is becoming more common. You do need to be aware of it. We can, like, Nebula and the team can talk about, we can facilitate the conversation, but this is what the dark web looks like.
Yeah.
And they are, it's not selling through fear. They're just kind of making sure that, these people that sometimes sit in their bubbles, it will never happen to me. We demonstrated in real time. So having that hands-on evidence in a room with 75 people going, oh, okay. and then we bamboozled them with Copilot. So I think they were distracted. But the message of the day was, there's always more that we can be doing.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier on your brilliant events that you put on a beer, British culture, put free beer in front of people that come along. Huntress totally got that when they came into UK market, and they did their brilliant Breaches and Brews tour of the UK, which was phenomenal. I was involved, I went around to a lot of the events there. The most fascinating thing to me, though, was meeting, obviously, people who are interested in Huntress as MSPs, not already clients, but also the clients, the MSPs who do use Huntress, like yourself. And I got an overwhelming sense of, when it hits the fan for the first time, and it will, we all know that as an MSP with a client, having somebody like Huntress, it gives you incredible peace of mind. So the expertise. So could you give us an example, perhaps, of where that might have happened to you? Anonymizing, of course, but have you ever had a situation where Huntress, you look back and you go, thank goodness, they were there as that partner, because we really appreciated them.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you one great example where they've retrospectively realized that the proverbial has hit the fan some time ago. So we've onboarded customers, and part of the onboarding process is we'll deploy their other tools, now known as ITDR, around the Microsoft 365 stack.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just turn on and look forward. It's going to retrospectively look back through logs, rules, and events. And you kind of realize that basically every financial body in that company had been compromised at some point, and the mailbox rules still existed. So the guys were really good, like instantly just kind of blocked access, called us up and said, we've got 4 mailboxes we need to address now. They're a new customer. We know we probably need to act quick because, there's reputation there as well. We're onboarding. It's not meant to be too noisy. And the first thing we've done is blocked access to 4 financial people. But they saw the value in it, and we were able to clean up the rules, try and investigate as to when that did happen, what's the knock-on effect, and Huntress supported us throughout all of that. Being able to speak to someone on the phone, not just with those kind of smaller incidents, but if there was a ransomware or malware incident, that the alerts are going to go off, but there's going to be a human on the other end of the phone who knows exactly what they are doing, and they can work with the hands-on team to make sure that's remediated. It's the perfect mix. Thankfully, since having Huntress, we've not had anything get through on the device side, but Microsoft for sure has been the noisiest tool in a very, very good way. They are very good at making sure it only makes noise when we need to hear it. We've had customers in 365 for 12 years, where some that we've onboarded last week just from an IT manager, and you'll be amazed at what legacy things it will find over time. So you've got that peace of mind to go, what, we know the standards are there for our security moving forward, but we've almost done a legacy cleanup and got rid of any of the potential rubbish. So we know moving forward, it's a nice clean system.
Yeah, fascinating to me. And you mentioned noise there. So we know there's, especially in cybersecurity, is that there can be a ton of alerts, there can be a ton of noise, and it's easy for the important stuff to get overlooked. So I'm intrigued, you're at the cutting edge of things. Huntress earlier this year in 2024 announced depends on how you pronounce it, their SIEM solution or their SIM solution.
Yeah,
Whichever way you pronounce it, though. And I've
yeah.
had people on the show who have said, no, it's absolutely SIM. And then other people have said, it's SIEM. So I'll ask you, first of all, how you pronounce it. And then secondly, SIEM is typically reserved for the enterprise market. So is it something that Nebula are looking at?
SIEM. I'm
SIEM?
sticking with SIEM. Yep.
I'm a SIEM guy as well. I'll
Good
just
man,
say that.
good man.
Yeah.
It has fallen into our product stack purely because of the requirements. So some of the MOD customers, they have to comply with things like ModCert, DefStan, these kind of regulations which aren't necessarily governed like Cyber Essential B, where you get a nice tick at the end of it. There will be one line in amongst 4,000 pages that says, by the way, the devices should log. There are tons of tools that could do it. Like you say, it didn't really fit the MSP model when you might be selling EDR and backup and everything for quite a small couple of quid cost that, bolting into your support, and then this SIEM tool is £12 an agent.
Yeah.
Didn't fit. What Hunters have done really cleverly with their log ingestion, how long they keep the logs, the type of logs they control for how, it fits like a glove for us because there's no extra deployment. The SOC is the same team effectively. It's not making any more noise than what we'd expect, but you've also got a very good interface where we can proactively go looking for things. So if we suspect something internally from an IT perspective, we can actually use that tool. It doesn't necessarily have to go to the point where something has hit the fan and we're going, oh God, the insurance company wants to know how this happened. It can also be a useful tool for just day-to-day governance of the devices, who's logging into the device, who's trying to install applications on it. So we can look and alert for those things ourselves. But it's really good at only making noise when it needs to. And when it does, there's human layers. So before it reaches to us, it's been sanity checked and validated. So when it reaches you, the team are well versed now to set up and pay attention. Whereas before on historical tools, there's a lot of noise and we're doing the filtering, and the information the SOC is giving us is exactly the same as what we're reading on the alert. So there wasn't really any value to us. Huntress will take the alert, humanize it, help you to understand it and what you should do next, as well as the steps they've taken to automate the process.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this as an MSP, you're unfamiliar with SIEM or SIM, it depends on which part of the world you're from. Please don't worry about it. It is a, reasonably new technology, certainly to the managed service provider space. But I'd encourage you go and check out Huntress's adaptation of SIEM for the MSP space, because as Chris was saying, it's really interesting tech, and I think it'll be something that you'll see replicated across other vendors. But Huntress, as usual, are the first movers in this space. So definitely want to check out. We talked a lot about tech. I'm a techie geek. I'm open about that. Chris, you mentioned earlier on you love the tech the same as me. But we both know that when it comes to cybersecurity, the weakest link in any cybersecurity chain is inevitably the human being. So I'm intrigued. I've spoken to a number of different MSPs on this show who have mentioned about cybersecurity awareness training. Is that something that Nebula use, and what has the impact been if you do?
Yeah, I mean, even internally ourselves,
Yeah.
which was, there's this lot of sayings of, what did I say, drinking your own champagne or something about dog food.
Eating your own dog food,
Eating your
yeah.
own dog
I
food, yeah.
prefer drinking your own
Drinking
champagne.
your own
Sounds a lot
champagne, yeah, we
nicer,
do it
yeah.
better. Yeah, no, absolutely. Usually it's kind of an opt out. We don't give them the choice because, like you kind of touched on there, doesn't matter what money we spend on those technical controls, the human element still exists, and people make mistakes. But it's, have we done enough, and would we ever look back historically and go, we didn't do enough? And it's always on the human bit where you probably didn't do enough. So we're quite regimented, especially even internally, of making sure that our clients are doing their regimented awareness training from day one, where they're gap tested, and then they go on to their ongoing tracks, making sure they're doing their compulsory training. But we also complement that with our own trainers internally, who will then go in and do half day specialist focused events where we can do one-to-many training with them in person, open their eyes to what could happen, and making sure that, if, or I'm gonna say when
Yeah.
something bad happens, that we have all the controls in place, and whatever body we have to report it to, they say there is nothing you could have done more without spending millions of pounds. You calculate the business risk, you made the users aware of what their responsibility was, and we put the technical controls in place. We're happy, and we're just doing a bit of a cleanup. But yeah, it's absolutely an opt-out model for us. I think it's easy to implement. It's not hugely expensive. There are plenty of vendors. You don't have to use the same one for all your customers. We certainly don't. We want, there's some portals that might help them with compliance and policies and ongoing things like that around HR and ops. Or if you want, I know Huntress as well. We've just recently started integrated Huntress as one, where it's focused more on the content.
Yeah.
The work and the team they've got building out that content is fantastic. And actually, we have, I never thought I'd hear the day, but we've had people report back saying they enjoyed doing it.
It's incredible. So
It's rare.
have you gone through, Chris, the training yourself with what's the evil minx that I've got, Dee Dee,
Yeah.
on the cartoon videos that they have? Man, she's a nasty piece of work.
Yeah. I made sure I got those questions right, so I didn't have to. But it's, it is important. I think it's not touched on enough and I know PACs touch on making sure that your house is in order before you kind of deploy these rules around your clients. We've just recently gone through to get our cyber assured status, some governance, almost ISO level things. We identified gaps within ourselves. The IT guys were very regimented in their training, but some of the ops team maybe were going, "Oh, I didn't realize that was for me." It's like, okay, we need to stop. This needs to be elevated. We need to make sure we're doing this correctly. But then building processes out so we can hand it over to our customers. So it's not always governed by us. We almost make it a process of HR and operations in the customer to make sure their smaller teams are doing their training so their managers can become accountable for their team doing the right thing.
Yeah, security access training or awareness training, I beg your pardon, is certainly something I would encourage everybody listening to this to watch for all the reasons. I'm so glad you said about, I'm not really going to call it the liability, but certainly the perspective that you can't be 100% with technical tools, you just cannot. It's just not the way it works anymore. So, have you done as much as you can to educate people? And I do foresee, a time in the very near future, actually, when MSPs are going to be held accountable, if not in law, then certainly in the relationships about, well, could we have done any more for this? And so that awareness training is super, super important. So glad to hear you're doing it really, really well. So we've mentioned, the Huntress relationship there that you speak glowingly of, like so many people have come on this podcast. But you also mentioned PAX 8 as well. Of course, for people listening to this show from around the world, the PAX 8 offices in the UK are based in Bristol, just down the road from where Chris's office at Nebula IT are. What sort of other services do you take from PAX 8? You've mentioned the great relationship for the workshops and the other bits and pieces there, but are there any other services that you take from PAX 8?
Yeah, we take full advantage of the marketplace. If there's a tool that suits, that we can migrate back into PAX to just make everything simple, from billing process to deployment and purchasing. But one of the, I wouldn't call it a tool, more of a service, their professional services team.
Oh yeah.
We'd been going for years and years and years, deploying what we believe to be correct, and it was working for the customers. But we're kind of going, it's quite difficult for us to get a third party perspective. So we were made aware of the team and how there were incentives from Microsoft to kind of drive what we were doing. So we brought in the PAX team on 2 of our jobs last year, just to say, look, we don't necessarily need you to deploy it. We just want you to sit with our team and almost make recommendations, make suggestions. Is there anything you would do differently? Is there technology that maybe we need to be aware of in this process that would speed things up or make it more cost effective, or things that we may not be doing correctly? We've been doing Azure Virtual Desktop deployments since pretty much day one, and sometimes you can be quite stuck in your ways in how you deploy them. If you're not, as an MSP, it's very difficult to focus just on that tech. So having the PAX team just sit with us and say, 90% of that is industry standard. Why don't we look at doing this? Were you aware of how Microsoft have adapted this? These are things now you can incorporate actually in your baseline. You don't need to manually do this. So that was really beneficial for us, and knowing it was just available, not so much as a value add, but a service we could lean on where there was no financial implications. Everyone won. PAX were getting closer to us, forming that stronger relationship. We were able to deliver that better service to our customers. We went from 3 engineers looking at a job to 20. We were able to really home in on what we would improve. So that was massive for us.
Yeah, and I know we've interviewed Andy Reedman from PAX 8 on the show before, so we'll include that in the show notes. And I'm very conscious, listeners, Chris, people listen to the show when they're out walking the dog or in the car, commuting, all sorts of things. So if you are listening to this and you think, these guys have mentioned a ton of different tools and I'm frantically trying to scribble them down, never fear, we've got you back. So we'll include in the show notes for this everything that Chris and I have mentioned thus far. And there's been a lot, and there's more to come, so hang in there. So you mentioned, for instance, Azure Virtual Desktop. I don't think we've come across too many other MSPs that have really embraced Azure Virtual Desktop or turned it into a success. What has been your experience with that technology?
It was really the charity space that drove it for us. So again, we kind of inherited some charity customers that were relying on legacy remote desktop, but they're also another industry, I don't want to call it industry, vertical that really should be savvy around the cybersecurity side of things. Yeah. So we work with various charities that maybe work with at-risk children. So we were kind of trying to make them aware that being readily available in the cloud or on these hosted systems is fantastic if they're secured. Otherwise, it's not worth the risk. So that's where we kind of encourage them to move towards that Azure Virtual Desktop. The model around business premium with the charity pricing works fantastically. There are some benefits and rebates and kickbacks you can get from Microsoft to really bring the price down. And that's where, again, where PAX can be really, really helpful, is looking for the little nuance, little secrets that Microsoft put out, but maybe don't do the best job in explaining to us.
Agreed.
But it was just an easy upgrade route for us. We didn't want to replace legacy systems with an updated legacy system. We just wanted done with remote desktop services. And Azure Virtual Desktop just fit the bill, especially where it fits now with the management through Intune. Again, alignment with our baselines. It doesn't matter that they're virtual desktops; they're still aligned to the baseline. And we ended up just with kind of a specialist mini team internally, about 3 or 4 of the guys who just kind of saw it, thought it was quite cool, and now they run with it. So again, it's something that started with some of the senior guys, but everyone has kind of embraced it. We're not to say it's going to be there forever. You know, some of our customers have since moved on from that with more workloads moving into SharePoint and 365, and you don't have the need for applications being on desktop.
Yeah,
we're not saying it's, you know, that's the only thing you should use, but it's a really good stopgap between those old legacy, irritating, frustrating line of business apps that will never go away. So it's a good little gap for us.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I remember that being a massive issue 20 years ago. Fast forward to today, you know, some things have got better, but that remains still an issue. So yeah, I think listeners and myself, we're getting a really good idea for what the culture at Nebula IT is. You're clearly very open, very giving with knowledge to the industry as a whole. How would you describe the culture internally at Nebula?
We just did our year wrap up. Actually, we actually challenged the team to try and do this, and we really struggled with it because we don't like being coined as we're close like a family.
Yeah,
we think we landed on a professional football team.
Okay.
And people who use Traction and EOS, this might ring true, but we truly do believe we've got the right people in the right seats doing the right job and really wanting to do them. And they're all pulling in the right direction. There's not a single person in here now that are pulling, you know, to the side or wanting to do something else. But there is that cultural piece, which is very hard to put your finger on. All the work that we do around the volunteer stuff, the fun that we have, you know, the causes that we support, whether it's, you know, local girls football teams, all the rugby teams, Community of Purpose, and Amy, the team who look after at-risk kids who, through the summer holidays and school holidays, can't afford really to actually put dinner on tables and things like that. So all the team have kind of, everyone has volunteered time. So I think we threw about 50, 60 hours of time in that the guys are going, you know, on Bear Grylls adventure days and canal boats and cinema trips with kids. And it was a learning curve for the guys here because a lot of them don't have kids, and they actually came back saying, I learned quite a lot. But yeah, I've always tried to kind of refine this down to a sentence, especially as we try and recruit, but it's so difficult. I think everyone's just having fun doing it, and they're seeing the things that we've said we're going to do and that we've achieved. There's buy-in, and especially the last kind of 5 years where we go, we want to do this. Not these, there are big, hairy, audacious goals, but there's these realistic, achievable ones. We go, what if we could do this? What if we could try this? Okay, well, we trust you to go and do it. Go make mistakes, go break stuff, go test stuff, get close to the clients. I don't want you being an interface between the screen and them.
Yeah.
Go out and see them. If there's an account manager that's going to site, go say hello. You know, so we've got that. I suppose one major thing is that we're always trying to upskill and develop the team. We don't want them hitting the ceiling and not wanting to move or grow. So we've always had an apprentice scheme. We've always had development schemes internally, frameworks where we can try and identify maybe where we can help them professionally, personally, and just develop as people, including myself. So you know, we're all at the cutting edge of having done this before. I've worked for MSPs before. Some of the team internally have, some come from internal IT, but we're all kind of on this merged goal of, I wonder if this will work. This will be cool. So it's so far so good. 12 years.
Yeah,
we can do another 12.
It is inspiring to see from the outside looking in. And I said before we jumped on the call, you and I, just before we were on air, said how I followed Nebula's journey for a little while now, and it's amazing to see from the outside in and the people that you know you're building up as well. So, what does excellence mean to you, Chris?
Being not just the thought leader, we want to actually back that up with fact and not word. So for us, it's continuing to develop that Nebula way of doing it. Just there's so many ways of doing stuff, and Microsoft will have one way. Other vendors might have different ways of doing it. We're looking to consolidate that into the Nebula way and nebularize the things that we're doing. It's hard to say what excellent will look like because we're constantly reviewing it. We're constantly saying, okay, well, we've just hit that layer that we wanted to hit a minute ago. What's next? How are we going to develop this onto the next one? So it's a great time to ask me because we are getting ready for next year. For us, it's not now about that financial growth. It's that buy-in from customers for us, that ecosystem of customers. They're not just going to be people that we work with and we pass on product. There's going to be that relationship layer with consultancy-led, advice-driven ecosystem community of customers. That's really what we want. I actually think the events is what has triggered that for us.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you mentioned as well that financial that's not the main motivator. However, I know you were very successful financially as well as culture and everything else MSP business. Have you found that the by focusing on that level of excellence across the business, the financial element has just come anyway without you even focusing on it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work that we've done around ConnectWise tools like Sleek that you'll be very familiar with. Understanding what the industry believes to be best in class, what we think where realistically we could achieve without pushing too hard. I think by standardization and bringing everyone under the same route and the same map, that we've driven a lot of efficiencies that have not just driven the top line, but driven our costs, around the delivery of it. Leaning more and developing and use the term again, evolving from that product-led organization to service and consultancy-led is and was the biggest transitional change that we've gone through. We're going to continue with that. We've seen the biggest impact to our finances is just, there doesn't have to be a product cost to everything we do.
Yeah.
If we've got the skill set and it's under internally, and we're not utilizing that team to 80, 90, 100%, whatever it might be, then there's room. We'll have some fun with it.
Yeah. So we've talked about excellence. We've talked about culture. Innovation. I said right at the top of our conversation there, you're one of the UK's most innovative MSPs. May make you blush, but people will actually absolutely know that for now. I know from listeners who give us feedback on this show. They say, thank you for shining a light on these tools. I was never aware of it. Really interested in seeing what other MSPs use. But what about you, Chris? Where do you, keep an eye out for opportunities for innovation?
I still have the nerd bug. And,
you and me both. Tell us more.
We've we've actually had to put a freeze on, that shiny toy syndrome. I was always at events going, oh my God, we've just look at this. I met these guys. They're really good. I know that is not going to be beneficial to the team anymore. Yeah. So it's about them squeezing everything they can out of the tools we have, but then also involving them on a process and a cycle of reviewing the tools and seeing, is it the best thing that we can use to solve that problem now? Are there alternatives? Even PSAs, RMM, these big core central things that seem very scary to change, that on a cycle they're always up for debate. I do enjoy the PackSet and ConnectWise events. They're fun, don't get me wrong, but they're also great just to keep in touch with other MSPs and kind of, especially on the American side, understanding where they are now, because a lot of the things you touched on, legislation and litigation and compliance and the culture of the MSP may be responsible for these things moving forward and being held liable. That's where my focus is now, more than the ones and zeros and the technical side of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do still like to get in the way. I still do my Microsoft certifications just so I can walk in the room and be a little bit smug. It doesn't last very long.
That's amazing. I used to do the same thing back in the day just to prove to my engineers. I still know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't think it's very beneficial to culture development, but I'm still going to do it. I'm still just going to let them know I've still got it.
What was the last exam you took?
I did my AZ 104, so the Azure
Yeah.
associate administrator type of thing. So that's just because I'm still helping maybe drive the direction of where we are with Azure Virtual Desktop. I think I did my Teams Room one as well, just just so we could tick a box. But
Lead by example, though. I
yeah,
mean, we're
yeah,
joking
that's it.
about it, and we're talking about the geeky nature, and you and I share that quality for sure. But leading by example, it's, everybody I've ever had on this show who has run a wildly successful MSP like yourself, Chris. They don't say to their staff, "Do as I say, not do as I do." They lead by example. So kudos to you for that.
I think that there is a fine art between letting them know you will get involved if you need them to, but giving them the space. I think
Yeah.
I know now, looking back, that I probably hampered a lot of development years and years ago, where it's like, no, come on, this is the way I would do it. This is the correct way. I've got this mantra, and it sounds cliche and rubbish, but I want to be the dumbest around that boardroom table. I
Yeah.
want them to dictate the direction. And it was that point where I can go, this is going absolutely in the direction that we want it to go. There's more opinions being formed. It's not a dictatorship where we're saying we are going to do things this way. Having that leadership team and involving everyone in the organization to have an input has been brilliant for us.
Yeah, that is so refreshing to hear. I was interviewed by Luis Giraldo of Scalpad the other day for his podcast. Had a great time, and he asked me the question, "What do you see as like the number one issue why MSPs don't grow?" And I said it was around the ego of the business owner. They can't put they need to be needed, but it's clear to me, Chris, amateur psychoanalyzing here, you've overcome that. You're raising the people up around you. You're happy to not be the most needed person within the business, and that's probably why you're achieving success.
It's something we never try and focus on or think about too much. Every now and then you maybe look back and go, could I still be doing more? But that's part of my journey, is learning to be a better, leader. It's something that's maybe not talked about as much in those kind of emerging MSPs.
Yeah.
I think if you go past that £1 million revenue mark and you've got that team building around you, that it's not. I don't know if I was lucky or unlucky, but being a sole shareholder and sole director, there wasn't anyone to tell me I was doing it wrong, and maybe I just got very lucky along the way.
Yeah.
But now having that team around that we can bounce, it's not just technical decisions, it's HR decisions, operational decisions, the overall direction of the business, and going, do we have buy-in? Absolutely, right? This is going to be loads easier because it's not me telling you where we're going to go and hold on. We're saying, let's all kind of go together, and we're going to, we might deviate the direction a little bit through the year if things come up. But yeah, that's been, like you said, the biggest thing that I think had hampered us historically is me getting in the way.
Yeah, but you're self-aware enough to see that,
To move.
and to move out of the way. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I've talked about feedback from listeners. One of the pieces, I had a really interesting question recently. As I said at the top of the show, I try to shine a light on the most successful, knowledgeable experts in our space, and you definitely fit into that category, Chris. But the question I had from one of the listeners got in touch was like, what do the guests on this show get out of this? Why do they share so openly, knowing that the audience of this show is other managed service providers who are going to take these ideas, and if they've got any sense, they're going to run with it? I thought it was a really good question. Let me ask you, Chris, as a guest, you have given so freely of your experience and knowledge on this conversation here. I've heard you as a guest on other podcasts like TubbTalk. So why do you guest on shows like this, and why do you, give away all your trade secrets?
Probably two-prong. I would say there is more than enough work to go around.
Yeah,
for sure. That has never worried me at all. We white label for other MSPs. We've got MSPs that use our services, and we factor them into other customers. But I think I came from another MSP that maybe was quite closed door, quite reclusive, always looking at what other MSPs were doing. And admittedly, that's probably how I felt when we started Nebula. It's like, what's everyone else doing?
Mm-hmm.
If you actually get involved in things like peer groups, network groups, IT Nations, Evolve groups, it's quite therapeutic. it's quite nice to you realize actually that there's areas where you're going to help people, and there's areas where they are going to say a sentence which might revolutionize how you drive your business forward. The majority of people creating MSPs, you touched on earlier, are not business leaders by design. They're
Yeah.
technologists. They enjoy the nerd element of it.
And become accidental business
Yeah,
owners.
yeah. So that was my biggest development. Is we got involved with Goldman Sachs and Oxford Uni and 10KSB programs to develop me personally, and just being able to share that with other MSPs and recommend. I was recommended to that course from another MSP in the local area, and it's
Nice.
he got a leg up by going on that, became a better leader, and said, Chris, I think you should look at this. It's something and you'd really benefit from. And since then, we've recommended it onto other people. And it's you always keep one eye on the competition,
Of course.
but you're different enough to know that there is true separators in the value that we bring than an MSP, 100 meters down the road.
Yeah.
We literally have MSPs 100 meters down the road, and we rarely come across each other. Like I said, there is enough work and enough client, enough gaps in the market for everyone.
So we've got an idea for who you are within the business. Who's Chris Pottrell when he's outside of work?
Great question. This has probably changed quite dramatically over the last 12 years. So I'm a football nut. I'm one of those hybrid nerds that like sports. So
Unusual, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm a diehard Arsenal fan. I know I'm going to get some grief for that. But nowadays, it's I've got a little boy, so I'm married. I've got a little boy who's just turned 9, and he is taken over my whole social life now. He's deep into his football, so it's great. But there is no time for me.
Arsenal fan as well, or
he's an Arsenal fan? Yeah, absolute diehard. I've made sure of it.
Of course.
So yeah, if I'm not here, to be honest, I'm trying to actually pull back on the volume of work that I'm taking on, so I can even spend more time with my little boy Arch, because I think I sacrificed a lot of time with wife and child getting this off the ground over the last 12 years. It's quite like developmental years, so I'm trying to make up for it. And we're just having fun. Beer. There is beer, obviously. I do like
beer's a recurring
beer
theme in our conversation, isn't it?
My wife's going to listen to this and go, God, why did you say that? But yeah, I've had a close knit 2 or 3 mates from when I was 3 or 4 years old, and we played football together. We went to school together. We did colleges and unis together. We still hang out together. We're in the same phases of our life. We're all married with kids. We're amazed that we're all married with kids. We never thought we'd see that. So I've got a really nice balance now. I think we're in this place where the company's looking after itself. It's allowing me maybe to pick up a couple more hobbies. But there's vets football that I might play. But
well, thank you for sharing so openly, because and one of the reasons I asked that question is there's going to be a lot of people who are running MSP businesses who are perhaps where you were a few years ago, and they're putting the hard work in, and they're thinking, it's easy, isn't it, to get lonely, to get discouraged and think, is this ever going to be worth it? But, I said earlier on, I think your journey is incredibly inspirational, and where you are right now, man, fantastic. You are, you're reaping the rewards of the hard work that you put in.
No, thank you, mate. Yeah, it means a lot. I think it is important that you celebrate the wins, but just get your head down and work through where it gets tough. It will pay dividends.
Yeah. Well, I can't let you go. We've already talked about it's an open secret now. We are nerds, we are geeks, we love the tech and that. So I can't let you go without saying, are there any new technologies emerging at the moment that are tickling your fancy, you're getting excited about?
I have to be careful here, because if I answer, the guys will know internally they've been looking at new technology and new things. It's quite buzzwordy and relative. Copilot is just, it is impressing me more and more and more. I maybe struggled to see the benefit of it from the outside very early on, but we're working with it in quite unique ways with integrations and APIs and calls and things. We're starting to see how it can really benefit us. So we're excited about how we can uniquely offer that into clients.
Yeah, and is there anything specific about Copilot that you found, like any aha or blow away moments recently?
I'm quite old school with it. I love the Teams premium features, the meeting features, just being able to, we love to talk, but I can go on with a client for an hour, and it was a 20-minute call about something very specific. So having the AI notes, the recap notes, but then being able to, interact with those notes, organize my diary, make sure I've got everything prepped. It truly is, living up to Microsoft's market message for me at the minute, especially around that side. It is, from an ops perspective, really making my life easier.
Yeah, I spoke to it was Eric Osland from PAX 8. It was back on TubbTalk 154. We talked about how to use and sell Microsoft Copilot for MSP growth. We had so much feedback on that. We're going to turn it into an ebook. I caught up with Eric in Berlin a few weeks ago at PAX 8 Beyond, and holy cow, he is at the cutting edge of what he can do. But it is mind-blowing, isn't it? Like the technology that's there and what it enables you to do. And how many, from speaking to other MSPs, do you see other MSPs implementing it, using it? Because I'm sort of concerned a little bit that the MSP market is not embracing AI the way it possibly should do.
Yeah, I think a lot of MSPs probably going through what we went through is, how do we monetize it? It sounds quite crude because there isn't, margin on licenses and resell. And if anything, it has the potential to put greater load on your service desk. Because if you're kind of enabling all your customers with Copilot because they've asked you, we're just going through phases of Copilot enablement, readiness, and then we'll kind of unleash our customers onto it. So they do have to tick some boxes through us. Ultimately it's their decision, but we've shown them what can go wrong if something is configured incorrectly, and you unleash the power of like AI across your tenant. But it goes back to the old adage of MSPs. We're here to add value. So if you provide a Copilot license, the value add should be, well, let's show them how they can utilize the license properly. What features is relevant for that pool of customers? We'll be putting webinars and probably further events on around, Copilot in a box for specific customer types, accountants, lawyers, all that sort of stuff. So there is work that you can do around it. It cannot be seen as just a license that you're reselling like a business premium. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I could talk to you for an entire episode all about AI, but I know you're a busy man. This has been a phenomenal conversation, Chris. I'm so grateful that we connected, and I hope we get to spend a little bit of time together in the near future at events. Talking of which, you mentioned that you attend some of the IT events. Are there any on the calendar for 2025 that you can give us a peek into your diary?
I think we've got quite a full calendar. So some of the team will be at PAX in, I believe it's Amsterdam next year, in the European one.
PAX 8 Beyond,
Yes, DatoCon in, I believe that's Dublin again. They'll be there. I'm in Denver for PAX 8 Beyond for the American side, and we'll probably have one more US event snuck in there somewhere just to stay relevant and in touch with the industry, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. It's been fantastic for me as well. I love speaking to people like yourself who are making it work in the real world, not just theoretically saying, oh, well, we're waiting for the results. You're seeing the results. You are absolutely killing it out there. So congratulations on all of your success, and Nebula IT, brilliant business, one to keep an eye on. You're gonna have made a lot of new fans with this conversation today as well, Chris. So for anybody listening to this who wants to connect with you, perhaps wants to continue the conversation, where can they find you online?
Best place is probably LinkedIn. So you can find me as Chris Pottrell, Pottrell, or so Chloe, our marketing girl, doesn't shout at me. You can find Nebula IT Services on LinkedIn as well. So be sure to give that a follow.
Yeah, we'll include all of that in the show notes that you can find at tubblog.co.uk for this episode. Chris, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. I wish you all the best in the future. Not that like you're going to need luck. You are making your own luck. So.
No, thank you, Richard. Appreciate the time, mate. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.